It's Tuesday, December 31st, and while most people are busy wrapping up the year, something huge just happened that could quietly change the future of America's war on drugs. For the very first time, the United States carried out a direct strike on land targets inside Venezuela, destroying a major cartel shipping facility in what may be the most aggressive counter-narcotics move in decades. But here's the shocking part. Almost nobody noticed. There was no Pentagon announcement, no official statement, no press conference, and no breaking news alert. The explosion was carefully made to look like an accident, and the media completely missed it. And that silence is exactly why this story matters. If you want to know what's really happening behind closed doors while the establishment stays quiet, make sure you subscribe right now and turn on notifications, because what we're about to uncover is something most people still don't realize. The strike happened late on Christmas Eve, December 24th, at precisely 11:47 p.m. local time, when a massive explosion lit up the Venezuelan coastline. State-controlled media rushed to explain it away as an industrial accident at a fuel depot in Zulia State, but satellite imagery quickly exposed that story as false. The blast radius stretched more than 400 meters, far beyond what any ordinary fuel explosion could cause, and even more importantly, the facility that was destroyed wasn't storing fuel at all. It was a strategic loading dock operated by the Tren de Aragua Cartel, one of the most powerful criminal organizations in the region, which had been moving an estimated 12 tons of cocaine every single week through Caribbean routes bound for the United States. What makes this strike even more significant is that U.S. intelligence had been watching this exact location for nearly 8 months, tracking ship movements, monitoring trucks, mapping routines, and building a complete pattern-of-life analysis to justify what came next. This wasn't a rushed decision or a reaction to a single shipment. It was a carefully planned operation. And this is where the story takes a very different turn from anything we've seen before, because this strike did not follow the usual military playbook. That's why you haven't seen dramatic footage on cable news or heard officials boasting about American power. When the Department of Defense conducts a strike, it is legally required to brief Congress within 48 hours and usually holds press briefings to shape the public narrative. But this operation appears to have been carried out under CIA authority, using Title 50 powers that allow covert action without public disclosure. Intelligence analysts familiar with the mission say it involved a standoff precision munition, most likely launched by an unmanned aerial system operating from international waters, never entering Venezuelan airspace, and giving Washington full plausible deniability. The level of precision was remarkable. 3 reinforced warehouses and 2 heavy loading cranes were completely destroyed, while nearby civilian buildings, roads, and infrastructure were left untouched, a level of accuracy that only comes after weeks of surveillance, advanced targeting, and detailed planning. And while the strike itself was devastating, what it represents is even bigger, because this operation is directly connected to a silent but massive shift in American drug policy that has been unfolding out of public view. Since January 2025, reported drug interdiction operations across the Caribbean basin have increased by more than 340%, but those are only the missions that have been publicly acknowledged. Behind the scenes, in early December, President Trump quietly approved a fundamental change in strategy, moving away from simply intercepting shipments at sea or arresting traffickers and toward direct action against the infrastructure that keeps cartels alive. This shift became possible through a little-known amendment tucked into the 2025 National Defense Authorization Act, which expanded presidential authority to designate major drug cartels as foreign terrorist organizations. That single legal change opened the door to using the same kinetic tools once reserved for groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda, including precision strikes against high-value targets. And Tren de Aragua was a prime example of why this new approach was approved. This cartel is no longer just about drugs. In 2024 alone, it was linked to the trafficking of more than 45,000 Venezuelan migrants into the United States, many of whom ended up trapped in forced labor or sex trafficking rings in American cities. Intelligence estimates suggest the cartel generates roughly $8.7 billion annually, making it wealthier than some small nations, and it has operated for years with near-total impunity under the protection of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, who allegedly receives a cut of cartel profits in exchange for political and military protection. That's where this strike becomes more than just a counter-narcotics mission. Venezuela is currently facing one of the worst economic collapses in its modern history, with inflation hovering around 400%, a currency that has become nearly worthless, and a population struggling to survive. Maduro's grip on power depends on two critical pillars: loyalty from the military, which he pays using US dollars skimmed from oil revenues, and steady cash flow from criminal networks that operate outside international banking systems and sanctions. By destroying this cartel facility, the United States didn't just disrupt drug routes, it directly attacked one of Maduro's key financial lifelines. Intelligence reports now suggest the regime is struggling to make payroll for elite military units, increasing internal pressure at a moment when Maduro is already politically vulnerable. The timing of the strike is especially revealing, because it came just 72 hours after opposition leader Maria Corina Machado released documents alleging that Maduro personally approved the use of Venezuelan military bases for cartel drug staging operations. When all these pieces are put together, a clear pattern emerges. This is not just about stopping drugs from reaching American streets. It's about weakening the economic foundations of a hostile regime without firing a single publicly acknowledged shot. And the evidence shows this plan has been in motion for far longer than most people realize. Congressional budget documents from March 2024 reveal a $470 million allocation for Caribbean counter-narcotics enhanced capabilities, buried deep on page 1,847 of a massive omnibus spending bill that almost nobody read. That money wasn't earmarked for more Coast Guard cutters or additional DEA agents. It was allocated for ISR platforms and precision engagement systems, which is bureaucratic language for advanced surveillance drones and strike-capable systems. Around the same time, the U.S. State Department quietly evacuated non-essential personnel from the embassy in Caracas, a move typically made ahead of operations that could trigger retaliation. Satellite imagery from Planet Labs further confirms the nature of the strike, showing the facility fully operational on December 23 with trucks and vessels clearly visible, and completely destroyed by the morning of December 25, with debris patterns consistent with a direct guided munition rather than an accidental internal explosion. And according to intelligence sources, this strike was only a test, a proof of concept designed to see whether the United States could carry out covert attacks on cartel infrastructure without sparking a regional crisis or attracting massive media attention. The test worked perfectly. The media was distracted by holiday coverage. Maduro couldn't publicly complain without exposing his own ties to criminal networks, and the operation achieved its objective with 0 American casualties and no visible military footprint. Now, cartel leadership across Latin America is watching closely, because if the United States can strike inside Venezuela with impunity, then no location is truly safe anymore. DEA intelligence has already identified more than 20 similar high-value cartel facilities across Mexico, Colombia, and Central America, each responsible for moving or processing billions of dollars worth of narcotics. What makes this even more unsettling for cartel leaders is that Trump hasn't just approved these operations. He's hinted at them using coded language in radio interviews, signaling that the old rules of the drug war no longer apply. While mainstream media remains silent on what may be the biggest shift in U.S. counter-narcotic strategy in decades, these covert operations continue in the shadows. The real question is no longer whether more strikes are coming, but how many have already happened that the public still knows nothing about. If this kind of reporting matters to you and you want to stay ahead of what's really happening in the world, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell, because these stories won't break themselves, and we'll see you in the next one.